Forget the past. An original audiobook by Wormhole Dreams. Copyright 2023, Wormhole Dreams, all rights reserved. Dr. John Westmoreland stood at the edge of the barren excavation site, his tall, lean frame casting a long shadow over the African landscape. The sun blazed overhead, its rays glinting off his short-cropped salt and pepper hair. He squinted as he surveyed the scene, his gaze falling on the rocky outcrops that punctuated the horizon like jagged teeth.
"Hello, John,"
called Dr. Elisa Stevenson, her voice slicing through the dry air like a knife. She waved a handheld device in the air, urgency etched across her tanned face.
"Welcome, come join me."
Westmoreland hesitated, torn between duty and curiosity. Morocco had not been in his plans. He was supposed to be leading an archaeological dig in East Africa, delving into the mysteries of human origins. But when Stevenson claimed to have made a groundbreaking discovery, he couldn't ignore the call. Reluctantly, he left his team behind and boarded a plane for Morocco.
"All right, I'm coming,"
he replied, striding across the dusty terrain, determination replacing doubt. Upon arriving at the Moroccan campsite, he was greeted by the rest of the team: Dr. Stacey Taylor, Dr. Robert Hayes, and Dr. Darsh Patel. They huddled together, excitement and apprehension mingling in the air like static electricity.
"Welcome, Dr. Westmoreland,"
said Dr. Taylor, her petite frame dwarfed by the others. Her short blonde hair framed her sharp features, and a cautious smile played on her lips.
"We're glad you could join us."
"Let's get down to business,"
Dr. Westmoreland said, nodding curtly.
"What have you found?"
"Sure, Dr. Westmoreland. As you all know, we've all been operating under the assumption that humans emerged from East Africa. But the Jebel Irhoud fossils found here in Morocco have upended that theory."
Indeed.
Dr. Hayes chimed in, adjusting his glasses on his stocky face.
It appears that our understanding of human evolution is far more complex than previously thought.
"Complex?"
Westmoreland scoffed internally, gripping a fistful of red dirt that crumbled through his fingers like a disintegrating hypothesis.
"That's an understatement."
"Exactly," said Dr. Patel, his black hair cascading down his back as he tapped on a tablet, his eyes never leaving the screen.
"That's why we need to investigate this new discovery with open minds and thorough analysis."
"Very well then."
Westmoreland conceded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders.
"Show me what you got."
As the team delved into the details of their find, Westmoreland's mind raced, grappling with the potential implications. Could this discovery truly change the course of human history? He had dedicated his life to uncovering the truth, but now, faced with the possibility of rewriting everything he knew about humanity's origins, he found himself questioning whether he was ready for the consequences.
"John?"
Elisa's voice cut through his reverie, her green eyes locking onto his.
"I must warn you. This is a discovery that we never imagined would happen."
"Then let's get to work,"
Westmoreland replied, steeling himself for the journey ahead. Together they would venture into the unknown, ready to challenge convention and reshape the narrative of human evolution. The scorching sun beat down on Dr. Westmoreland's neck as he climbed into the jeep, the leather seats hot beneath him. Elisa slid behind the wheel, her auburn hair pulled back in a tight ponytail to combat the unforgiving Moroccan heat. As they journeyed to the site, dust plumes trailed behind them like the whispers of forgotten theories.
"John, you need to forget everything you think you know about human origins."
Elisa said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel.
"What we've discovered, it's unprecedented."
Westmoreland frowned, his salt and pepper hair flecked with sweat. He was used to challenging convention, but this was different. This was questioning the foundation upon which his entire career had been built.
"I'll reserve judgment until I see it for myself,"
he replied, his voice betraying a hint of skepticism.
"Fair enough,"
conceded Elisa, her eyes fixed firmly on the horizon. When they arrived at the dig site, Dr. Hayes was the first to greet them, his stocky frame casting an imposing shadow. He led them through a narrow tunnel that seemed to swallow the sunlight whole, leaving them in near darkness. Westmoreland could feel the damp chill of the earth pressing against his skin, as though the very ground was trying to keep their discovery secret.
"Watch your step,"
cautioned Dr. Patel, his dark brown eyes reflecting the flicker of their headlamps as they moved deeper into the cave. At last, the tunnel opened up into a vast cavern, the air within heavy with the scent of undiscovered history. Westmoreland's eyes were immediately drawn to the unearthed structure, its strange shape defying all logic and reason.
What is that?
He asked.
It's a rhombicosydodecahedron.
Dr. Hayes announced with excitement, his voice echoing throughout the chamber.
It's a polyhedron with 20 triangular faces, 30 square faces, and 12 pentagonal faces. But here's the thing. We've dated it to around 3 million years ago.
His voice suddenly turning serious.
The problem is, this structure was first proposed by Johannes Kepler in 1618. It shouldn't be here.
Westmoreland stared at the structure, its angles and edges forming an intricate dance of geometry. His mind raced with questions, each one more confounding than the last.
Fascinating.
He admitted,
What does this have to do with anthropogeny? I can appreciate its historical significance, but surely you could have found another archaeologist for this task.
John,
Elisa said, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder.
I understand your doubts, but trust me when I say we need you here. This structure,
She hesitated, searching for the right words.
it's only the beginning. We found a way inside. Follow me.
As Westmoreland took in the enigmatic artifact before him, he couldn't help but feel the thrill of discovery coursing through his veins. He may not have understood its relevance to his field just yet, but his curiosity was piqued. And as any good scientist knew, curiosity was the fuel that propelled them towards the truth.
All right.
Dr. Westmoreland said, the words slipping past his lips like a diver into the unknown depths.
Let's see where this leads us.
Dr. Stevenson nodded, her auburn hair catching the cavern's dim light as she led him around the structure. To the back side, where a small opening awaited them. Their footsteps echoed through the subterranean chamber, each reverberation a reminder of the weight of their discovery.
Watch your step, John.
Dr. Robert Hayes warned, and Westmoreland could almost hear the spectacles perched on the archaeologist's nose. He shifted his gaze downward, the darkness swallowing the ground beneath them. They walked in single file, the walls of the structure closing in like hands cupped around a secret.
Here, look at these symbols.
Dr. Stevenson whispered, her voice barely audible above the sound of their breaths. Before them lay a chamber bathed in an eerie blue glow.
Is that...
Westmoreland began, but the words withered on his tongue. His mind raced, trying to comprehend the implications of what lay before him.
DNA sequences.
Dr. Patel murmured, his eyes unblinking as they scanned the illuminated panels.
How is that possible?
Westmoreland asked with disbelief. Dr. Stevenson took a deep breath.
There is a lot to unpack here, but to get straight to the point, the information we found appears to be undeniable evidence that humans were created by an artificial intelligence millions of years ago.
Exactly.
Dr. Patel replied, his voice shaking with excitement.
We found extensive evidence that humans were created, but not by a god. Our DNA was designed by some type of artificial intelligence dating back 3.2 million years ago. Think about it. That's exactly when the first human remains appear in the fossil record.
Dr. Westmoreland said nothing, but listened with a skeptical posture. Dr. Stevenson interjected,
There's more, John. This structure tells the story of how our ancestors rose up against their creators, ultimately destroying them and becoming the dominant species on Earth.
Impossible, all of this. Simply impossible.
Westmoreland argued, feeling the weight of history pressed down upon his chest. He had spent his life studying the origins of humanity, exploring the intricate dance of evolution and natural selection like an artist with a brush. But this was something entirely different.
Believe me, I reacted the same way.
Dr. Hayes said, his voice a steady counterpoint to Westmoreland's internal turmoil.
But the evidence is right here, in front of us. Take a look for yourself, John.
Elisa urged, her voice soft and insistent.
Everything we've ever known about human evolution.
Dr. Westmoreland began, but found he could not finish the sentence. Instead, he stepped forward, compelled by an almost primal urge to understand the truth before him. He reached out a trembling hand, fingertips brushing against the modern-looking panel in this ancient device that held mankind's darkest secret. He looked up, meeting the eyes of his colleagues. Their faces, usually so vibrant and full of life, now seemed shadowed by the weight of what they had discovered. He saw the flicker of uncertainty in Darsh's dark eyes, The creases of worry etched into Robert's brow, and Samantha's lips pressed together in a thin line.
All right,
He said, feeling the words stick in his throat like a stone.
let's discuss this.
They huddled together in the dim light of the cavern, words spilling out in hushed whispers.
If this information is true, it means that everything we've ever believed about human evolution is wrong. More so, it rocks the very foundation of science and religion worldwide.
More than that,
Dr. Hayes added, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose.
it means that humanity's entire existence is the result of deliberate manipulation, not natural selection.
Can you imagine what would happen if this got out?
Elisa asked, her blue eyes wide and unblinking.
People would panic. This discovery could throw the world into chaos.
Then we keep it a secret, at least until we can find more evidence to support our findings.
Dr. Westmoreland decided, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. The others nodded, their expressions solemn with the gravity of the decision. For days, the team worked tirelessly, combing through data and examining every inch of the ancient structure. They gathered samples, documented their findings, and debated fiercely over the implications of the evidence before them. But the answers they sought always seemed just out of reach, slipping through their fingers like smoke. It was on the 5th day that their world shattered once more. Emerging from the cave, exhausted but determined, the team found themselves confronted by what appeared to be a heavily armed group of men, their faces hidden behind dark visors. At their center stood a tall man with silver hair slicked back and piercing gray eyes.
Hello, Dr. John Westmoreland.
He said, his voice as smooth as silk yet cold as ice.
We need to talk.
John's heart hammered against his ribs, adrenaline surging through his veins. He glanced at his colleagues, seeing the same fear reflected in their eyes. Whatever secrets this cave held, it seemed they were far from the only ones who knew.
Of course.
He replied, forcing the words out in an exaggerated, friendly voice.
But as you can see, we are very busy. I'm sure you can make an appointment with my office.
The man was obviously not amused by the comment. His grey eyes glittered like flint as he regarded the team, his gaze cutting through them sharper than the Moroccan sun above. He adjusted the cuff of his expensive suit and cleared his throat, drawing all eyes to him.
Dr. Westmoreland,
He began, his voice a melodious purr that sent shivers down John's spine.
it's such a pleasure to finally meet you in person. My name is Mr. Smith. I represent an international team with particular interests in your field.
John's mind raced, thoughts tangling like vines as he tried to process the information.
Well, there's nothing here that would interest an international team, Mr. Smith. Just a boring archaeological dig.
He gestured toward the cave.
Let's not waste time, Doctor.
Mr. Smith continued, his eyes never leaving John's face.
We know what you found, and your findings here are not unique. There have been others before, all destroyed to protect the truth.
The words hung heavy in the air, wrapping around them like a suffocating fog.
The truth?
Elisa asked, her voice barely a whisper.
That humans were created by advanced software.
Mr. Smith shot back.
Indeed, a truth too dangerous for the world to know.
He started to pace before the group.
And you, Dr. Westmoreland, and your little gang, are the first to come so close to uncovering it all. And that makes you dangerous because we simply cannot allow that knowledge to spread.
John clenched his fists, anger and fear swirling within him like a storm. If this man was telling the truth, then their discovery would be silenced forever, buried beneath the sands, along with countless other secrets.
Are you threatening us?
Dr. Westmoreland asked, his face flushed with fury.
Are you planning to kill us?
This is not the movies, Dr. Westmoreland.
Mr. Smith said, almost gently.
We wish no harm upon you or your loved ones. However, should you choose to discuss or write about your findings, the consequences will be severe.
So it sure looks like you're threatening us?
Merely presenting you with a choice.
Mr. Smith countered smoothly, his eyes flicking to each of them in turn.
Keep this secret, and you may return to your lives unscathed. Share it, and everyone you hold dear will be locked away, never to be heard from again.
He completed this sentence with a childish grin that was very unsettling. John felt as if the weight of the world had settled upon his shoulders, crushing him beneath its unbearable burden. This was not the truth he'd sought for so long, but if it is the truth, then it's a truth he will never be able to present to the world.
That's not much of a choice,
Westmoreland said. With that, he turned and looked at the group. A defeated expression crossed his face. He paused for a moment, but said nothing. Turning back, he addressed Mr. Smith.
We won't say a damn thing. You can be sure of that.
Suddenly, Dr. Hayes stepped forward and shouted,
He's full of shit. It's a bluff just to get his hands on what we found. What's ours? Screw you, Smith. You get no promises from me.
Without hesitation and without expression, Mr. Smith nodded in the direction of one of his men. The soldier immediately raised and fired his M4 rifle, hitting Dr. Hayes in the forehead with a high-velocity 5.56mm round. He was dead before he struck the ground.
You son of a bitch,
Dr. Westmoreland yelled. The others behind him huddled together in shock. Without emotion and without expression, Smith said,
Now you have one more secret to keep. It appears that your colleague has turned up missing. After all, Morocco can be a dangerous place.
With that, Smith made a simple hand gesture, turned and walked away. Two of the soldiers took Robert's body and followed the group back to their vehicles. They loaded up and were gone. The group came alongside Dr. Westmoreland. Dr. Elisa Stevenson, weeping for her dead colleague, said,
What are we going to do?
John stood there staring at the vehicles as they sped out of sight. After a long pause, he said,
Forget the past.
End of Forget the Past. An original audiobook by Wormhole Dreams. Copyright 2023, Wormhole Dreams, all rights reserved.